Hey everybody, I'm Chris Metzler, one of the programmers here with the Green Film Festival San Francisco. We're excited to be back and be live and in person, and also being able to share films virtually. You've just had a chance to see the really wonderful film Arthur Tress, Water's Edge, and we're lucky enough to have filmmaker Stephen Lewis here. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And what's doubly neat about this is it's always neat when we kind of run across local films in our submissions. And so, neat to kind of have a hometown screening of your film. Maybe a good place to start is like, how did you get kind of familiar with Arthur's work and know that there was this kind of larger documentary you wanted to make?
It's kind of an organic process. I actually met Arthur on the ferry going from the San Francisco Ferry Building to Mare Islands, and he had his camera with him, his Hasselblad, and we struck up a conversation. I'm a hypnotherapist by trade, and there was just some kind of cross, interest. He was interested in what I did. My long time ago, I was a film major in college. I hadn't done much with it since then. That was a long time ago. And I was just starting to feel like I wanted to make a little movie. And his name really I was familiar with his name, but it didn't really ring a bell yet. And I texted my wife from the ferry. I was like, have you heard of a photographer, Arthur Tress? And it turned out she had actually studied him in college in the 80s as an art major. And he was a very big influence on her own work. And it turns out we actually had a lot of his books at our house. I'd seen them.
Wow.
So it was just kind of this serendipitous meeting. He was mostly a photographer in New York since like the 60s and 70s. He moved to the Central Coast of California, like in the 90s, and he had just moved up to San Francisco for a few years when I had met him. So it was just this kind of serendipitous meeting, and I thought, oh, well, I'll just make a short film. I wonder if he'd be into letting me follow him around because he's still doing work, as he was approaching 80. And he was going out every day taking pictures all over the Bay Area. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll get my feet wet with filmmaking. I'll make a 10-minute documentary. I'll follow him around for a few weekends and then put something together really quickly, I thought. Um, so I kind of did that at first. I showed him a little cut of something I had done, and he told me he thought that it was a pretty accurate representation of how he works and how he's always worked. And so then he started to open up himself to me more as we kept going. It became this organic thing. And then, 4.5 years later, I've got basically a feature-length documentary to show for it. It wasn't the plan at first, but that's the long story of how it all came together.
And how did he feel kind of like being on the other side of the camera? Was there any trepidation or was he excited to be able to share his story? I mean, as an artist, he knows, what kind of goes on in, when you're kind of, telling a story behind a lens in a different sort of way.
Yeah, so for sure, his background, he was, as he said in the film, a frustrated filmmaker himself. He had tried to make some films in the 60s, and I think it was just too overwhelming for him, maybe technically. And he ended up becoming, very well known as a still photographer. But still, he does tell narratives in his photography. So I think he was very, let's say, aware of what I was going through as a filmmaker. He was a little tough on me in the beginning. I think he wanted to see if I was serious. But then, yeah, again, as soon as he opened himself up, I think he felt safe. And then he was very much a partner in this film. Like he was very open to sharing, all kinds of things, just, personal things, and opening up his world to me. And, as a kind of a one-man band, I don't think I was very intrusive during the filming process. And I think that maybe help ease any kind of trepidation. He's had people film him. He's had like giant crews kind of cram into his house to interview him. And it's, it's a kind of an artificial environment. I think he's very willing to talk about himself and his process and all kinds of things. So, but paring it down, so it's just the man with a camera and following him around, kind of fly on the wall a little bit. I think that helped make him even more at ease, let's say.
And what like, obviously this project continued to blossom in these, good ways as you kind of started on this adventure. What were some of the things that you most surprised you that you wouldn't have expected when you started the project?
Well, so I think again, when I was starting, I thought, oh, I'd love to see how this, he's an artist, he's a photographer, and he's been doing this for decades. How does he work? And I didn't know how he worked, so that was certainly the original draw for me. Um, and it's alluded to in the film, this kind of idea, magician with a camera, and like, what's a magician? There's kind of two versions of that, like you know a, somebody who knows magic tricks and is prepared and kind of behind the scenes working stuff out. I think that's him. He goes back to the same location over and over, but then these serendipitous things happen. So did he plan it? Like, did he know just because he's done it a lot, like a magician might? Or is he like more that mystical magician where he's kind of the winds kind of align just right? And that happened a lot too. So I think it's both. And that was very surprising, just to kind of witness, the clouds parting, the light will shine down, and then he'll take the picture and then they'll close back up again. It's like, did he do that? He thinks maybe he did. So I don't know. I just kind of recorded it.
Well, so many different things are just kind of moments of serendipity in that way, even
Yeah.
just, of how you guys met. When we invited you to be part of our Green Film Festival, like, what, in your own way as a kind of a filmmaker, in what way do you think that there's this kind of green ethos or kind of environmental subtext in the film and also Arthur's work?
Yeah. You asking what is the green
Yeah.
subtext?
What would or what? How did you feel about it being invited to be in an environmental film
Oh,
festival
oh.
and feeling kind of simpatico in that way?
Well, for sure, I think there's that a thread that runs through all of his work going back to the 60s, when he was doing, he was in New York City, and he's, you know, documenting kind of the raw sort of pollution and lack of green space in New York at that time. And then to move to Cambria, which is, this beautiful coastal place. And then he actually helped create this very beautiful protected space that was going to become some kind of subdivision along the coast there. I mean, it's still there. It's just beautiful. It's got a lot of walkways now. So he, his own environmentalism and his own care for that, aspect, it permeates his work. So, I'm guess I'm not surprised maybe that you were interested in it. I mean, it wasn't necessarily my intention. Oh, I'm going to make an environmental documentary. I mean, that came through as well organically. It's like, oh, we're going to these locations in California. Oh, he's interested in these things because of his, let's say, environmental concern and care. And so I hope that does come through in the film. I think it certainly is embedded in his own aesthetic for sure.
Well, it's San Francisco. We like to kind of program quirky and interesting. Our definition of green films, is a little bit broader, just in the sense that we as human beings and the way that we interact and we see our own environment, I think is very important in regards to solving some of the larger ecological issues that are out there. And so it was neat to kind of run into the film and also kind of see Arthur's approach to stuff. Since you've wrapped up with your film, any updates or different things that didn't make it into the film?
Let's see. Well, there's a lot that didn't make it in. I had about a 4.5 hour cut about a year and a half ago. Um, by the time, let's say, it's never done, right? For the filmmaker, you want to keep making tweaks. There's a whole sequence with his collection of dental floss, which I won't get into too much, but it was kind of gross. It was one of my favorite scenes, and they say you have to kill your babies or whatever. It was one of those, like, I love this scene, but it doesn't really fit. I'm not sure how to make it fit. Um, there's, I have plenty of sequences, not so much like that, but just a lot of going out with him in a lot of locations. So it's really just finding the pieces that really help tell the story, and um, yeah, pairing out what maybe is redundant, to make a film I don't think anyone would want to see the 4.5 hour version other than maybe me and Arthur, but I'm hoping this version is entertaining.
Well, you did a great job. So can you also, I know Arthur's going to have a display of some of his work in the city here that those of you that have had a chance to see the film might want to go and check out in person. Can you tell us a little bit about that installation and what's going on?
Sure. Yeah, so it's going to be at the Harvey Milk Center from, oh shoot, I'm gonna mess up the dates. It's mid-October through the end of November. So it's about a 6 week show. And it's mostly a collection of his more recent work. So it's not the stuff he's necessarily well known for, but it is a lot of the work that happened while I was filming him and certainly around that era. And I happened on him at a certain time. He was interested in Mare Island. So, there's a chunk of the movie that's on Mare Island. If I had happened upon him now, we would have been doing parking lots in in Silicon Valley. So he's documenting these kind of shrines to technology and biotechnology, and how, like, they build these multi-billion-dollar complexes and no one's there because they're all working from home or whatever. So it's I think the work that you'll see in that show. I think there's going to be close to 50 or 60 recent photographs that he's done. So you'll get a more broad range of what he's been working on in this, let's call it an era. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's the Harvey Milk Center down on Market Street. There in the
It's
Castro.
it's sort of
Or
near Dubois Triangle.
oh, the
It's a
former photo place,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
it's not the Harvey Milk, the shop that Harvey Milk had in the Castro. It's actually on it's what's the street? It's just the Harvey Milk Photo Center, and it's kind of a community center. They have dark rooms, they have community spaces, they have a gallery, they teach classes there in photography, and they do a lot of things there. So they do have a really wonderful gallery space, and I think Arthur will also be there to discuss his work at the opening, which yeah, I'm gonna get the date wrong. I should have that memorized by now. But yeah,
Definitely. Well, everybody kind of search out. Thanks again for making a wonderful film, Stephen, and really thrilled that you're part of the festival.
thank you so much for including me. I appreciate it, Chris.
Take care. Thanks again, Stephen.
Bye bye.